All right. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us today for this special occasion here in our Designers for Dream Living Facebook group. We are coming together to spotlight a very special person for Black History Month. So, as the Innovators, which is just a team of women who are coming together to help each other to grow, to move our businesses forward, we have decided to continue to spread the importance of collaboration. So we come together weekly for opportunities to help each other sharpen each other's iron. And so I am just really honored to be joined with Miss Barbara Beckley and Laquita Parks, who are a part of this innovator team. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Barbara Beckley, who can introduce herself. We're going to introduce each other, and we're going to get to our special guest, Miss Karen Nance, who is here in honor of Black History Month.
Well, thank you, Queen Lachelle, and all the queens on here, especially Karen. Thank you so much.
You.
My name again, Barbara Beckley. I am the CEO and founder of the Diamond Factor LLC that helps women understand their PPD, as I call it, their purpose, their passion, their drive, and to make sure they show up and shine like diamonds to the world through what they do, their business, or anything that their special project that they're working on. So this is the Innovators is just phenomenal, and collaboration is the key. So as Lachelle said, that collaborating with each other and with our special guests is an honor. Laquita?
Well, hello, good morning. I am Laquita Parks, and I am super excited to be a part of this group of dynamic women. And I am even more excited to have our special guest here, Karen Nance. But I am the CEO and owner of PayProV Publishing, where we help people take their stories from a thought to a realization. And PayProV is pain, progress, victory, because without pain, there's no progress. And without progress, there can be no victory. So before we introduce our guest, or before I introduce our guest, Lachelle, I don't think you had a chance to introduce yourself. So could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, you know what? I'm so busy always talking about what we're doing, forget about that. But I am America's Supermom, mother of 15. I'm a podcast host, speaker, all things related to mental wellness. And so I'm about empowering women with strategies to help them live a life that's stress free. So I am so excited to be a part of this team because this is one of the ways that I face every day with a smile instead of stress. So we are excited to be here and to share. And I love just getting different insights from different guests because I think it's so important for us to see that we all have special things that we bring to the table. And our stories that we think are sometimes just ordinary can really be inspiring to other people. So I'm so excited to dive into a conversation with Miss Nance, and I am going to pass it back over to you, Laquita, so you can introduce our guest.
Thank you so much, Lachelle. Well, I am so delighted and excited to introduce Karen Felicia Nance. Karen is one of my authors, and she is a new published author, and her book is called "My Father Poisoned Me." So, without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Miss Karen. Good morning, Karen. How
Good
are
morning.
you?
Thank you all for having me. I'm just honored to be here, and you all, I'm with greatness in Queens. And so I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much. I met Laquita less than 60 days ago. That's the power of social media through LinkedIn. And I was looking for an author for my book about my grandmother, Ethel Ray Nance, who was a civil rights activist. She lived from 1899 to 1992. And I had been laboring for 5 years on this book, and was getting advice from a lot of different people and going in a lot of different directions. And so when I landed on Laquita's LinkedIn, I was frustrated. I said, it's going to take a long time. She said, not 5 more years. We're not going to do that. That's not going to happen here. And so I'm happy to say in less than 30 days, I think we had the first book and decided that we were going to do it in a series because my grandmother's story is so rich. And so I'm just so excited and honored to have met her and met all of you. And networking is the key. And I appreciate that.
I love that. And so, a 5-year journey, I think this is really good for a lot of people to hear a little bit more about because oftentimes we have visions and, when other people don't align with that vision or they don't support us with that vision, we give up. But you had the tenacity and perseverance to keep on in spite of it being 5 years. So, talk to us about, what that looked like because some people may be in that part of that, but feeling like they're not getting the right signs, so they give up.
Thank you. I had promised my grandmother before she passed that I was going to write her book. And she passed, as I said, in 1992. And so life got in the way. I have children, and it was put on the back burner, but was always in the forefront of my mind. And through this process, I'm not an expert. My background is as an attorney, and I'm also a private investigator and work with children with special needs. And so I would contact people through LinkedIn and other means and networks and ask for their support and guidance. And when you ask 5 people, you get 10 different uh, 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 10 different pieces of advice. And so I found myself being very eager to listen to authors, people that had traveled the road before, trying not to reinvent the wheel. But at the same time, you have to go with your gut. And so I was finding that every time I would talk to somebody new, I would get a new sense of direction and I would head in that direction. And so it was extremely frustrating. I had almost 400 pages of text. I would send the text, and there's a lot of naysayers. A lot of people were telling me, we don't know you in social media. Your book is not going to be successful. The only thing that you can do is self-publish because no one is going to buy your book. And so even though I was getting that information, I felt that, well, this is a labor of love. So I'm not interested in notoriety. I'm just going to write this for my grandmother. But still, I would get back to the place of what am I going to do with these almost 400 pages? And it wasn't until I met Laquita that she said, there's another way to do this. And that was so refreshing. And I was relieved. She said, no, we're going to do this in bite-sized pieces so that her whole story can be told. So my message to people would be never give up. And you can't listen to everybody's advice. It's good to get advice, but at the end of the day, you need to follow your heart and your gut and realize that if you keep moving forward, keep persevering, you're going to get some advice or the light bulb is going to go off in your own head where you can figure out this is how I'm going to handle this particular project. And it's just been a blessing. It was a huge relief to meet Laquita, and she's a wonderful spirit, as you all know. And it's been amazing. She's helped me in many, many ways with my website, with just all kinds of things. She's a coach. And so as all 3 of you are, and we all need coaches in every aspect of our lives. And so I appreciate that.
Love that.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So I want to jump in. So Karen, thank you so much for that. I want you to talk a little bit about the book. My father poisoned me without giving too much detail, because you have to buy the book to get all the story. But tell us a little bit about My Father Poisoned Me and how you came to that title.
Sure. My focus uh, for since I was in my early 30s and promised my grandmother that I would write her story is about my grandmother. As I said, she was born in 1899, but she was the 4th child of William Henry Ray, who is African American from uh, I'm sorry, from North Carolina, and her her Swedish mother, who was from Sweden. They met in Duluth, Minnesota, had a son, a daughter, a son, and a daughter in that order. The age difference between the oldest and the youngest is 10 years. And so Ethel's, my grandmother's sister, Aura, was almost 7 years older than Ethel. And she was born in 1893. And between the late 1800s and early 1900s, influenza and pneumonia were the leading cause of death. Just like in 2020 and 2021, that would be COVID. And so it was very difficult to find a cure or a way to help people make it through these illnesses. And so Aura, unfortunately, at age 7, before she turned 8, she died of pneumonia. And my grandmother, even though she was only 18 months old, she wrote in her journal stories about her sister and how she wanted to, she wished she had grown up with her sister. And so reading through my grandmother's journals and realizing that it was a very difficult time just in terms of living in Duluth with the weather conditions and also the strain of being in an interracial household. Her mother was, she spoke English, but not well. And there were very, very few Blacks, less than 1% Black population in Duluth at the time. And in fact, I believe that's the case today. And there weren't hospitals that people would go to back then. The doctor would actually come to your house. And so, and the doctors were overwhelmed. They were going house to house, either dealing with influenza and or pneumonia. So can you imagine a white doctor going to this household, opens the door, and there's this big, tall Black man and this short Swedish woman who doesn't speak English very well, and he was taken aback. And so he was in the household to check on Aura, who was very ill. And so the stories about the interaction with this doctor and the parents and how they were able to maneuver this situation. And unfortunately, Aura died. And so how that affected every member of the family. And there was not much said about Aura. I only had a couple of pictures, and I felt it was really important to leave her footprint on history. And coincidentally, I don't think it's a coincidence. I'll say that my son was born 100 years after Aura. He was born in 1993. She was born in 1893. So I believe that her spirit still lives on, and just wanted to honor and celebrate her.
Wow, that's awesome.
Did I tell too much, Miss
No,
Laquita?
that was
No,
good. That was
good. You did good. Barbara, did
yeah.
you want to ask? Did you want to jump in? You're muted, Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't want the static or anything. But wow, Karen, I'm just just you being just not just a wonderful author now, but you're a public speaker, you're a lawyer, you're a private investigator. The list goes on, and then you're a mother. And my thing that I wanted to ask you is, having doing all these hats, um, what kind of motivates you to just say, especially being in speakers, because I know we're all speakers here too. What is like your main thing goal that you want to be, as you public speak? What is your like your mission? I know some speakers have like a mission that they're out there doing. What is yours?
My mission is to inspire people that at any age, at any um, point in their lives, any condition that they're going through, if they see it as a negative, either if it's a physical disability or a mental health issue or just problems with the family, it's really important to know that one, there's support, and two, that it's never too late. Uh, I got married the first time at 40. That marriage didn't work out, and I got married the day before my 57th birthday, my second marriage. And I believe that people give up too soon, or I'm 30 and I'm too old to do this. I had my first child right before my 35th birthday, and I adopted my son when I was 46. So as long as we have breath, as long as we have an ability to move forward, we have, God put us here for a reason. And as long as we have a breath to take, we need to take advantage of that. So I have dreams. I always have had dreams. And being an older mom, My son, my youngest is now 16. He says, "Well, you're old." I said, "Well, no, I'm hanging in there. I think I could make it for a little bit longer, or a lot longer." And so, just to inspire people that at any age you can be alluring. That's my motto. And so it's just having that dream and vision that we can inspire others. And that's what I'm here to do, is to inspire others and leave a positive imprint on those that come behind, and those that are here that are still struggling, and just a ray of hope. And if Karen can do it, then you can do it as well. And I'm here to help. I love the fact that all of you are coaches, and it's Laquita's coaching that was invaluable to me in writing this book, and I aspire to do that as well.
I love
Well,
that.
Karen, I just want to thank you for giving me hope, because after you said you've been married and divorced, and I'm going through my struggle of separation divorce. So there's hope for me,
Yes.
because you're doing such an awesome job at doing that. So thank you for giving, your story, because we always say stories are important in people's lives, to know that you're not alone. And I think by you telling your stories, and telling people you can move forward no matter what age you are. And that's what
Right.
I really love when you say that, because a lot of people feel like there's an age limit. Like, well, if I didn't get this done by the age of 50 or 60, then I'm done. And I
Right.
mean, look at us, as all of us. This is only the beginning. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And I can relate to the parenting. I have a 7-year old and I'm 50. Okay. So I'm like, there is hope. I'm looking at you and it's like, hey, I need to know that there is light at the end of the
Definitely.
tunnel, because you do kind of go through that, so that is so true. I think the next question for me would be, what it's like to kind of pass the torch, so to speak. A lot of people talk about, oh, I don't know about my story, but how is it when you're telling somebody else's story? Is that giving you like more motivation because it's for somebody else more so than for yourself? I'm just kind of curious about that.
I thank you for that question.
Hmm.
Honestly, I feel it's easier to talk about and highlight my grandmother than myself. People have asked,
Mm,
well, why don't you tell your story? And I said, well, I wouldn't have a story if it weren't for my grandmother. And so I'm hoping that the courage to tell my story, and it's not the courage, but do people want to hear my story? I know it's important to me that people hear my grandmother's story. So it's a little bit easier. I think as women, especially as Black women, we don't put a lot of emphasis on our gifts and what we've done. We always want to help somebody else. And so I'm hoping that through telling her story, that I will get the courage to tell my story, or feel that my story is as valuable in a different way than her story is. She was the first Black policewoman in the whole state of Minnesota. She was with W.E.B. Du Bois during the Harlem Renaissance, and did a lot of really amazing things. And instead of saying I can never accomplish those things, but there's other ways that I can be important to my family and to help others. And so, to me, it gives me a little step up and say I can go on this journey, this writing journey, talking about her. And then through that, I can talk about myself and inspire others. And that's my hope, to do that. So yeah, it's easier. I have to admit, it's easier to not have the spotlight directly on Karen, but to have it on my grandmother, who I love dearly. Yes.
I love that. And, I mean, such historic people, because we hear about these people in history books and the media, and my question would be, having that balance with, um, taken action on seeing somebody who was a historic figure, because, we all can say that we hear about these people and know about it, but do you feel like it's a lot more impactful to have had the experience through your grandmother? Because, we can all talk about we all need to get along. We can say, I have a dream, and quote the speeches, but are we actually living what we're talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Do you feel
Exactly.
it's a little bit different because you have had the opportunity to see your grandmother personally interact with them?
I yes, to answer the short answer is yes. And at the same time, we as women are always in the background when it comes, for the most part, when it comes to history. And my grandmother made a huge impact, but the people that shine were the men at the time. And I think it's very telling that the March on Washington, we had Rosa Parks, but she couldn't, the men decided that she wasn't going to speak. And we, there's an, I don't know if it's an accusation or a statement that women can't have it all. Well, we're expected to be the mother, we're expected to do so many things, and yet, for example, I'll just give an example. Someone was helping me write a press release, and they said, mother, or author, attorney, public speaker, private investigator. And they said, why don't you add mother? And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And I said, how many do you see were for men, it says father. And I think that why do I have to come across as adding that? That is the most important job that I have, is being a mother, and I'm very proud of that. And at the same time, we always have to make excuses or add a subtitle to our role, and yet and still men don't. And then when we see the women that have really succeeded, the Black women, we look at Condoleezza Rice, or we look at Kamala Harris. They didn't have children, and it gives this impression that in order to rise to the top, we have to sacrifice some kind of way. And we are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than men are, I think. And so with this journey, I've realized that my grandmother didn't get her college degree till she was 79 years old. She's the oldest person to receive a degree from the University of San Francisco. And in reading through the correspondence with Du Bois and with Langston Hughes and some of these other wonderful men, they said, well, we can help you get a secretarial job. We can help you do this. But it was not on their level. She was a brilliant writer, but she didn't publish any books. Why? Because she was helping Du Bois go through his books. And there's nothing, I'm not trying to take away, but I'm just saying there's so much more that's expected. And at the same time, Black men haven't reached out and helped uplift Black women. It's like, you can assist me, but down here, you can be my secretary, you can be my assistant, but not my equal. And I hope that in writing her story, she was more than a footnote. I've said to Laquita, I was thinking about that as a title, and she was always in the background. And she was the backbone. Black women are the backbone of the world. And so that's been a challenge, to not be offensive or degrading or in any way take away from the men that have made a difference. But when you look at the accomplishments of Harriet Tubman, and just it's more, wow, she was a woman. It's like she was a human being who was extraordinary. And so I think that the light hasn't shone on our true gifts. And that's what I'm hoping this will be one book or one series of books that does that.
I love that. Mhm.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Truly amazing. So Karen, we've shared a lot over the last few weeks, and it seems like it's been actually longer than just
In a good way. In a good way.
In a good way. In a good
Yes,
way. It seems
definitely.
like we've known each other a lot longer. But I want to ask you. My question for you is: so we talked about Ethel Ray Nance, and we've talked about the contributions. So how is it important? I want you to share a little bit that she grew up in honor of Black history. We talked about there are so many people who made a contribution, and over again, we see the same people spotlighted. And not to take away from what they've done, because they've done an amazing job, but there were so many more. Ethel Ray was more than just a footnote. But I want to talk about. I know it weighs heavily on you. I want to talk about a little bit. Can you share a little bit about the next project number 2,
Sure.
and how it correlates to what happened with George Floyd?
Okay, sure. Thank you. My grandmother's family was in Duluth, Minnesota, probably from 1894. My great grandfather and his wife Inga moved to the Duluth area. It's about 50 miles, or I think between 50 and 100 miles from Minneapolis.
Mhm.
But when they arrived there, there were no Black families, and to take it a step further, there were no interracial families in that area. My grandmother wrote that she would go days without seeing Black people, and in 1920. So the book title, the working title, is "The Lynchings in Duluth: A Family Perspective." On June 15th of 1920, there was a circus that came to Duluth. Oh, it was only there for a day. And back then, most of the workers were African-American men who helped with the animals and just kept the circus going. And there was a a white woman, teenager, who lived in Duluth, and for whatever reason, she wanted to meet up with her then boyfriend, at the end of the circus. When the circus was ending, they were packing up, and they spent some time together. But by the next morning, the circus had pulled out of town, and the woman, the 19-year-old, said that 6 Black men had raped her. By then, the circus had moved on to another city, and the story, there are several stories about the lynching, but nothing was told about what happened. So the police officers from Duluth went and just arbitrarily picked these men. They were put in a jail cell in Duluth the next day. And as stories go, they get bigger and bigger and more exaggerated. And so the story throughout town that day was, what if a Black man had raped your daughter? And the only thing that they're going to get is 30 years, and that's not enough. So there was a lot of talk and just getting people more and more riled up. One man went to the home of this young lady, and her mother said she's sleeping. He told the crowd that she was dead. And I just want to back up just a little bit. They did send a doctor to the house that day and found out that she had no trauma, no evidence of any sexual assault or anything like that. But of course, that wasn't revealed to this mob that was growing throughout the day. So long story short, as they went to the mob gathered, some report that it was 1,000. Some people report there were up to 10,000 people that literally tore down the jail, tore down the bars, pulled 3 of the men out, lynched them, beat them, lynched them. And the story wasn't told from 1920. There was nothing, there was some news reports, but nothing in the history books. The children and the adults of Duluth or the state of Minnesota never heard about the story until 1979, when Michael Fido wrote a book about the lynchings. And then there is a memorial now in Duluth about that honors these 3 men. So my family lived 4 blocks from the lynching. My grandmother, who was 21 at the time, was about an hour away. She was working in a different town. My great grandfather was out of town. He worked on the railroads and did some work with the shipyards. And my great grandmother and my great uncle were the ones in the home. As I had indicated, Ora had passed, so there were only 2 boys, and both of them had passed as white throughout their life. Sometimes, depending on when it worked for them, they were Black, and sometimes they were white. And so the information that I have is that only Oscar was home, and the grandmother. So each of these individuals, my grandmother, my great grandfather, my great grandmother, and Oscar, have a different perspective of the lynchings and what had happened. And so that's what my book is going to be about, from those perspectives. We think of a household is one unit and that most people think the same in that unit because they have similar experiences. But because of Oscar's self-orientation, I'll call it, how he self-identified, he had a certain perspective of Black people, and that affected his participation or presence in Duluth that day. The great grandmother, my great grandmother, was from Sweden, and they had a certain perspective of about Black people, that they were beneath white people, and she held that belief. My great grandfather was from North Carolina, and he felt that things were better in the North, and that lynchings and that type of thing didn't happen where in Duluth. It only happened in the South. So he was grateful to leave North Carolina to a place where you could be treated fairly. That didn't happen, obviously. And so I think it's important, and that part of the story hasn't been told, to look at that situation from the viewpoint of these four different people who had four different life experiences. And so it's for a family perspective. That's what the next book, which, right, Laquita, I think will be out at least before the end of the year, if not sooner.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. That was awesome. Lachelle, you're muted.
Yeah, I was just saying that that is just wonderful to, be able to dive deeper into some of these different monumental events, from a family perspective. It's kind of just breathtaking to recognize how, there's so many families. We have family reunions. We talk to our immediate family, but really we don't know a lot about our history. And I think it's so impressive that, you have this catalog of information um, that, transcends years, of things that have happened in your family. So, what advice would you give to people? Because, like I said, a lot of people, they don't know where they came from, or, it's hard to know who you are every day, waking up, looking at yourself in the mirror. What practices would you um, advise people to start creating this atmosphere to where that type of record keeping and things are present for future generations?
I think journaling is really important. We are in a social media age where we email and we text, and it's really hard to keep a record of that. I don't think most of us are printing all of these emails or all of these text messages. And so having a hardbound journal, something that's in a booklet that we can keep. I'm very blessed that my grandmother was a stenographer and a secretary. So she just kept all these letters, their original letters. The oldest letter I have is from 1885 from my great grandfather that he wrote. And so they're just beautifully, they're the letterhead. We have an art that's been lost in the art of just letter writing. And it's so much easier to just send off a text. And so to me, that would be number one. And number two, just trying to preserve in audios of conversations. I'm very blessed that the Minnesota Historical Society did interview my grandmother in her 70s. And so there is a very short audio interview of her experiences with the lynching. So, but for that, I wouldn't have that documentation. So I would just say more, even though we are in this social media, internet age, we can take the time with our phones and with tape recorders, those of us who are older, and just tape these conversations. The other thing which you had mentioned when we have family reunions and that type of thing, people don't want to shoot, we don't want to air our dirty laundry. And so I might not want to share, I want to share the good things, but not the bad things. But it's a way for us to appreciate the fact that those that came before us struggled, and so they persevered. And so I need to hear that. I think we need to hear that if they made it, then I can make it as well. And so that can be very empowering. We can change that. And what Ms. Laquita told me is that my story is my story, and everyone has a right to tell their story. And my grandmother, even in an interview, said, I don't want to say anything bad about my mother or my father. And then she paused and she said, but they're not here anymore, so I guess it's okay. But that's your experience. That doesn't mean you love them any less, but it did have an impact on the decisions that you made in your life. And it's important. It's going to help me to be a better parent. And so if I share my experiences of what, how I perceived my father, my mother, how they raised me, the decisions that they made, hopefully I can do, uh, if it's better, a better job, but at least I'll have more of a perspective instead of not sharing that information. And I think that's imperative, that we really need to do that.
That's good. Now, so what's
Yeah.
the best way to kind of hold these journals and things like that, so they don't get messed up, because you mentioned original letters, and how do you keep that kind of stuff?
Well, my grandmother didn't have that as a priority. So a lot of the first couple of years was just putting them in chronological order, saving them in acid-free slip folders. So I have about 12 3-inch binders of just going through meticulously putting things in order. As I indicated, she passed in 1992. My uncle, her son, kept kept most of the documents, but they're water damaged. A lot of them, the books, they were in a garage or a basement where mice had eaten through some of the papers, and so. What I was told, which I was very appreciative, I wanted to take them immediately to get them refurbished. I mean, to be rebound. And people said, don't mess with the original. I said, okay. So I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to archive all this information. So I don't have any expert suggestions other than to keep them in an acid-free folder, which is what I've done. And at the same time, they need to be shared with the world. And so my position is, or my goal is, to have a place in Duluth, and I'm planning on traveling there because I've never been there, where the world can see these documents, their letters, and just wonderful papers and archived books that she had. She has her father's books, about 20 of them. So I don't believe that I should keep them in my home. I think that they should be shared in a place where everyone can see them and they can be preserved.
Yeah, I know with time, but I just wanted to ask you, Karen, I know you mentioned about the impact, and how the history of, just, just thinking about the lynching and all that, you were talking about that. I was going through my mind because I always when I listen to people talk, I put a movie in my head, and it's like I see the pictures, like I'm there, and you're good at speaking. I love it. You're a good storyteller. And then I'm just seeing all this, and I'm thinking about what's going on right now, and how a
Mhm.
lot of us as blacks are saying there's no different. It's just a different year. And then you have our non, black sisters and brothers don't still seem like they can't comprehend for some reason. So I'm loving that you're putting this out here. And I was just going to ask you because of the impact. It's good to put the book out there to tell the stories, but I feel like we need to do the next level of that. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think that looks like for you?
Well, the first thing I didn't anticipate or didn't think about was, even in telling Aura's story and then talking about the lynchings, I was aware of the lynchings, but in my 400 pages, they may have been two pages in my book. So the first thing I've done, and I'm happy about, is I made contact with the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial Committee. That was the name of the 3 men that were lynched, and they built this wonderful sculpture or dedication to the men in 2003. And as history would have it, George Floyd was murdered in May of last year, 2020, which was a month before the 100th anniversary of the lynchings in Duluth. And so, and maybe, like I said, definitely less than 100 miles away. And so the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial Committee has done a lot to keep the story of these three men alive, but also the younger generation and people that have clearly been affected, which is all of us, by the George Floyd situation, have pretty much combined the two events and said, have we made any progress? There's been a lot of discussion about, we're talking 100 years later, now we're talking 101 years later. And I want to leave a legacy or an impact on people that we have made progress, that we need to look at what those who struggled 100 years ago, they had tenacity, they had perseverance. And if my grandmother, who lived in an area where there were virtually no Blacks and was able to accomplish the things that she accomplished 100 years ago, that should give me motivation and inspiration to do that today. So instead of focusing on the negative, saying what were the circumstances that existed at that time, and no, they're not perfect, anywhere near perfect today, but I can take strength, move forward, and into prosperity for all of us.
I loved how you said that, Karen, because you know how we people make excuses, and I look back. That was in 1899. I mean, from
Right,
1899 to, you know, your grandmother did so much, you know, with the other famous blacks at that time, and we even have more now than they did back in the day,
right.
and we're not really using sometime what we have right now. So we need to be grateful first of what we have, and like you said, take that next level and look at the history and say, okay, do we want history to go back the same way? Do we want to keep doing this cycle, or do we, you know, move forward and
Right.
go a different direction? So you're taking us to that journey. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, this has been absolutely amazing. Karen, thank you so much for sharing. If people want to reach out to you and they want to purchase your book, My Father Poisoned Me, hey, you know what? We got to put the plug in.
Of course.
How can they reach you?
Two ways. The easiest would be through Pay Pro V Publishing, because people can see it right behind you, and through my website, karennance.com. And I do want to say that I couldn't have done it without Laquita. She has been a coach, she has been a friend, she has been amazing. And COVID's been difficult for everyone, but to be able to make this bond of friendship, which I told her, you're not getting rid of me yet. You know, we have a long way to go. And I'm so grateful to meet the two of you as well, and look forward to for future endeavors and working together. I'm so inspired by the work that all three of you do, and it's an honor to be here. And I want to thank you all for that.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to say for Lachelle and Barbara, collaboration is just so important. And these women, Karen, these women have made such a difference in my life. Lachelle, you know, gave me some thoughts and ideas that even before PayPro-V came into existence, when the pandemic first hit, just meeting her has been a blessing. And Barbara has been tremendous in helping me brand PayPro-V Publishing. She did the starter, she kicked it off. The beautiful video that you see on my website was created by Barbara and Lawana Bradford. And it has been such an outstanding thing. So just like you said at the beginning of the call, collaboration and connecting, it's so important because you don't feel like you're alone in your business.
Yeah.
And Karen, I'm so glad that that we met each other and I was able to just add a little bit of me into your life and help you, just like Lachelle and Barbara have done for me, with what, you know, with the innovators, and even being supported in what I do individually. So that's what collaboration is all about. And I'm so glad to introduce you to Lachelle and to
Thank
Barbara.
you.
And
Appreciate
you
it.
know, I know that they would be happy to help we're going to need help getting these projects out, and getting this is the Ethel Ray Nance project. So it's not just a book, it's a project. So there are so many legs to your story and your grandmother's story. And, for my parting, my ending comments, Ethel Ray Nance was more than just a footnote.
No.
So the whole world will know her story when we're done. So thank you
for
so
that.
much. Lachelle and Barbara, do you have any parting words before we end? This has been an amazing interview.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it has just been awesome. I think we don't have that time a lot to focus on the good things and the richness that we bring together. A lot of times from a woman's perspective and
Right.
from our culture being African American. So I think it's really important. As I get older, I learn to appreciate more about who I am and not feeling like I
Mhm.
have to conform to other people, but I have the confidence to be uniquely myself and just watch and see the people that gravitate towards me. Because, those are the people that God placed me to be around and to
Right.
continue to build and thrive and grow. And so I think this is really important to highlight because so often we talk about competition. If you're
Mhm.
doing this, I can't do that. And I love how you recognize that we're all coaches in some form or fashion, but we are demonstrating that you can work together, you can collaborate. You don't have to dim somebody else's light for you to
Exactly.
shine brighter. So I'm just happy to be in this tribe. And, it takes work, it takes commitment, but it really makes a difference when you know that people are going to be there to support you and you create an environment for that, because we do tell ourselves some hard stuff. Hey, now you need to do this better or whatever, but you know that it's out of love. And so really glad to have you here and
Thank you.
looking forward to sharing your story with my audience. I have a podcast. I would love to have you on as a guest
Oh, thank
to
you. Thank
share
you.
because I think it's so important. Distribution is key. It may not be on this platform, but it might be somewhere else. You don't know who knows who. So really excited to meet your acquaintance and looking forward to many collaborations in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm
Uh,
just like, I love being around royalty. These queens, Karen and the Queen Lachelle. Yes, 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 yes. I just get all giddy inside like a little kid, especially when I'm around women that are powerful. And you inspire me. Karen, you are my newfound friend. Just to let you know. You can't get rid of me. I don't care.
Yay! I'm excited.
And yeah, we do, like Lachelle said, we need to make sure that this book, you and everything, people are, that's the biggest thing that I love is to, give exposure to women that are doing so much. So as Lachelle, she has her podcast and I have my TV streaming, show. And, we're going to have to talk because I definitely want to get you on and we need to get you out there. So with the three of us, we got your back. We got
Thank
your
you.
back.
I just want to say that I'm also available to help. I'm not an official coach, but if you have any, I worked in child support for 20 years and have just done a variety of things, and I have an obligation to give back, not just in terms of the book. That's my labor of love, but I'm here to assist in any way that I can, and I just want you all to know that I'm here for you and your audience. And so please keep that in mind. If I don't know how to do it, I'll find somebody that can do it to support your causes and your wonderful audience. So thank you for this
Amen.
opportunity.
Look, well, then you just write with family, okay? Because we just grab the calendar and we come up and create stuff. So
That's amazing.
definitely it's so funny. Laquita, she'll say stuff and it's like, okay, girl, when we doing it? Okay.
yeah,
Get your calendar out. What's the date?
yes,
So yeah,
yes.
we create stuff. So that's good to know. We definitely will be calling on you.
Oh, thank you.
We
That's
believe
an
in
honor.
creating platforms. We create some platforms. So, if we don't have it, we create it.
Yeah.
And there's an audience for everybody.
Yes.
So This has been a really, really wonderful, wonderful interview. Karen, thank you so much. I know it's early in California, and I thank you so much for getting up super early. You're beautiful as always
You're so
to come
kind.
in and be spotlighted with the innovators. And with that being said, Lachelle will close us out.
Yes. So we just want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. And again, if anything that was said resonated with you, please feel free to share this video. And if you have any questions, reach out to Karen. She is definitely a wealth of information and insight. But if that just doesn't work for you, feel free to put your questions in the comments, and we definitely will make sure that we get those questions answered for you. In the meantime, I challenge everybody to search and dig a little deeper in your family history. Sometimes just finding out where you came from can help you with some of your own issues that can be stopping you from moving forward, and recognizing that you do have greatness within your own
Mm.
genealogy. So uh, go do some digging, and just remember that we all need to embrace being our authentic self, because we already are enough.
Mhm.
And if you need to hang around a better group of people, then call on us. We definitely will take you in, because we're all about sharpening each other's iron and helping each other to move forward. And you don't have to conform and be somebody you're not. Just continue being your authentic self, and we will all have room at the table. So thank you guys so much for joining
Okay.
us today. Karen, thank you again
Thank
for
you.
all of your insights and inspiration. And we look forward again to more collaborations in the future.
I do too. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, there you have it. Well, we will see you all on the next episode. Have a great, great day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.